The Freemasonic square and compass is not just a symbol that represents Freemasonry, a lodge, or a secret society. It is a symbol of gaining your own personal power. Now in this video, I'm going to be breaking down this symbol in the most detail I can possibly go into. Most people live in a state of illusion. They live their life impulsively, acting based on their five senses, tasting. They want to feel a certain thing like an orgasm, or they're basically just slaves to external things and their five senses, which leads to a very dark path where you'll never actually become a conscious creator and you'll never actually be internally happy. The Freemasonic square and compass reveals some deep wisdom about this. Now let me break this down. If you want to gain your personal power, listen up. The Freemasonic square and compass is a compass which is used to create circles. Now if you notice something about the circle, they have no beginning, no end. You can't tell where it begins and ends. It's eternal, which means this represents consciousness. Now, if you don't know what consciousness is, if you close your eyes, you have an internal world. You have thoughts, emotion, visualization. This is all consciousness, spiritual. Then we have the square. The square creates squares or lines, which represents matter. It has a beginning and an end. You can quite see where the beginning of the end is, right? So we can even link this to Leonardo da Vinci, the Vitruvian Man. We see the man in the square with the circle. The circle is the eternal consciousness and the man is the square, limited to the physical world. But consciousness is not limited. That's why it's outside the square. This is eternal. The body is mortal. The body will die. Consciousness will never die. If we look even closer at the symbol, we notice in this particular symbol, we have the compass overlapping the square. This is very, very symbolic. This represents spirit over matter, also known as mind over matter, consciousness over matter, the circle over the square. Like I mentioned earlier, most people are slaves to their senses. They go through their day and all they do is chase validation and feelings. They eat all day to feel good, which means they're slaves to their taste. They're slaves to their feeling. They masturbate, which means they're a slave to orgasms and external things. They're literally being governed by the external world controlling their internal world. They're literally living life on autopilot. And don't get me wrong, I was guilty of this too. We're all guilty of this when we join this world because we're not taught this sacred knowledge. Until you actually stop and recognize this, you'll be living life on autopilot. Literally not even living. You'll be running off subconscious programs, seeking external validation and being ruled by these five senses. The square underneath the compass represents consciousness on top of matter, which means the internal world is controlling the external world. It is the mind controlling matter and not matter manipulating the mind. In the occult and esoteric world, it's very important that you are conscious of every action that you are taking in your day-to-day life. Never act subconsciously. Always be conscious. What are you thinking? What are you acting? What are you giving your attention? All of this is contributing towards creating because you are a creator. Consciousness is a creative force. You need to make sure that the compass is on top of the square, that your inner world is controlling the outer world and not the outer world controlling the inner. As I've mentioned in many videos before, the internal world of consciousness is what's producing the external world. Your life is just a result of every thought and emotion that you felt in the past. Everything you own, everything you possess, your friends are all reflections of your consciousness. They're all reflections of what you are thinking about. When you change your thinking, your external world starts to rearrange itself. On a basic level, this symbol represents the combination of spirit and matter. You are a spiritual being and a material being. You are heaven, the sky, and earth, the ground. You are heaven and earth, spirit and matter infused into one. You are a bridge between the divine and the earthly worlds. And you can bring down these higher realms of consciousness, thought, imagination, and emotions into a physical, tangible reality. To do this consciously, we need to make sure the external world is not manipulating the inner world. Because if your internal world is being controlled by external circumstances, for example, you have a circumstance happen in your reality, an emotion triggers inside of you, and that emotion is a command to create more of that. And the thoughts that you think are creating more of that negativity. So it's a constant cycle of negative manifestation if you let the external world control your internal world of consciousness. So we need to make sure the compass is on top of the square, that the internal world are commands and not reactions to create your external reality. And not only just to create, but to actually enjoy life. If we let the external world bother our internal world, this means that we have some sort of mental or emotional attachment to the external world. We need to detach from the external world. Why do I say that? Because it's temporary. It's an illusion. We are going to die one day, and none of this will matter. You need to understand that everything in this world is temporary. You have to be okay with losing things, losing family, losing things in this world, because it's guaranteed to be temporary. We need to make sure the internal world is order and not chaos, commands and not reactions. Now, at the back of the Book of Wisdom, Volume 2, the book that I've wrote here, I go over the different meanings of the different arrangements of the square and compass. Sometimes we see the square overlapping the compass, which is the opposite of what we've just broken down. Or sometimes we see one leg of the compass on top of the square and one leg of the square on top of the compass. These are all highly symbolic. When we see the square overlapping the compass, this pretty much represents the beginning of the Freemasons' journey, when their internal world is being controlled by the external. They have a lot of spiritual growth and a lot of learning and inner work to do. Now, when we see half and half, one leg of the square on top and one leg of the compass on top, this represents the Masons' gradual emergence from the material realm into the spiritual. This interplay of symbols reflects the process of gaining greater light and knowledge as the Masons ascend from material concerns towards spiritual enlightenment. And of course, we've just broken down what this means. This represents spirit over matter. They're not chasing external physical things anymore. They're actually chasing and gaining validation and happiness from spiritual growth, more knowledge and deeper understanding of consciousness and themselves. Most people chase external material things, which actually don't make you happy in the long run. You could be given £1 million today. In a week's time, you would be back to the same original state of consciousness and actually chasing more and more millions of pounds. It's because nothing physical in this tangible world will ever satisfy your internal world of consciousness. So through spiritual growth, we can actually become happy and seek higher understanding, higher consciousness, which actually satisfies us eternally. So when we see the compass on top of the square, it symbolizes the triumph of spirit over matter. This arrangement not only signifies the mastery of spirit over the material realm, but also represents the resurrection, ascent, and dominion of spiritual principles over all earthly conditions. It's all about gaining personal power and spiritual growth. It's all about spiritual evolution, going from matter to spirit. The external world controlling the internal world, to the internal world ruling over the external world, where the mind becomes a powerful tool to actually create and command reality. The mind cannot create and command reality if it's being governed and tossed all over the place by external circumstances and thoughts. Here's a quick tip on how to know if your mind is controlling you. If your phone notification goes off and you're working on something and you instantly go to reach and pick up the phone as soon as the notification goes off, that is an indication that your mind is controlling you and you are not controlling it. The mind is the direction of consciousness. The direction, it directs the flow of your attention, your energy, your consciousness. So to practice to gain mind over matter, simply just meditation, allowing the mind to sit still and focus on one thing for long periods of time. And over time, this will gain mastery over your attention and your mind. If you are on your spiritual path, this should be your goal, your internal world becoming the master. The mind becoming a vessel for you and not a vessel controlling you. It needs to become a command center and not a reaction. Please like, share this with a friend and subscribe to the channel if you're new. Leave a link in the description for the Book of Wisdom Volume 2.